Hey guys, this is Ryan Blair here at Kaizink, and today we are responding to a comment, and I apologize if I botched your name, but I believe it's JSalbano8677, and this is regarding window graphics and how to set them up and how to work with a print shop and an installer to produce some world-class window graphics. So there's a couple of different ways to look at the bleed for a window graphic. And we basically look at three options here. The first one's going to be no bleed. And with that one, you're going to want to make sure that your measurements on the window are dead accurate. But this does allow for a little bit of error room, and it's not going to be an error on the print side or the installer necessarily, but the windows themselves. When you're on site and you're actually looking at commercial windows up close, there's a couple of things that could potentially pose as a problem, and that's going to be the windows aren't actually square, or that the gaskets or the silicone trim is old and beat up and not really in the place that it needs to be, or it's just kind of sloppy at that point. So that could also pose as an issue if you're doing no bleed and you're just producing the graphic to size. So another way to look at it is just adding a bleed to the right edge as well as the bottom edge. What that's going to do is it's going to allow the installer to basically put the graphic in the upper left-hand corner of the window. And once it's up there and they apply it to the window, then you go through and you're going to trim your right edge as well as your bottom edge. And then the third method that you could use is an inset or a negative bleed. And so that's going to be taking your overall window size and then reducing it by an overall of a ½ inch on the width and a ½ inch on the height. So you're basically going to have a ½ inch of glass showing on all sides. And at that point, you don't need to do any trim. So if the gaskets are bad, then you don't necessarily have to deal with, trying to work your knife around a wonky gasket. As far as the setup of this, so I guess step one is going to be determining with your installer and your print shop which one of those three routes is going to work best for you guys. As far as setting up the graphic, so you're going to want to get as accurate of measurements as possible. And then what we do is we'll set up each artboard as the window itself, and then we'll include the mullions on a non-print layer. So for instance, let's just say that we're doing 5 windows, and we'll just say that they're all the same, 24 by 36, and mullions are typically 2 inches wide. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer here, and we're going to make it a non-print layer, and this will be for the mullions. And so basically we'll do 2, and we know it's 36 inches tall, and we can just make that black. Essentially what you're going to do is you can just butt it right up to your artboard here to represent the mullion. And then using your artboard tool with Shift O, you could hold down Alt, click, left mouse click, and then Shift, and you could drag out another artboard. And you're essentially going to copy this out as many times as you need to. Also, in real world application, you're going to find that not necessarily all the windows are the same measurement, so you're going to want to verify each window and not just go based off of, oh, the first one I measured is 2436. They may be off. So you'd copy that out as many windows as you have. If you had windows that were stacked, you could go ahead and put your bottom windows in, and same thing, just carry over your mullions. So at this point, you're good to go ahead and start designing, and then I'll show you the little trick on how to proof it. And so let's copy these out just so it's a little more accurate. There, so that's essentially your window setup. I know I said 5, but we're just going to do 3. So now you're good to go ahead and start designing, bring in your elements. And I'm glad that you are taking the mullions into consideration, because you see a lot of stuff out there on the streets where you could tell that the mullions weren't accounted for. So you see that they just shifted over each panel, which is stretching out logos or people's faces or whatever the graphic may be. And if you're in the industry, it's real obvious. So you can put in all your assets, whatever your window design looks like. Let's say that's it. Okay, cool. So these 3 artboards are going to be how you end up outputting each panel, but you're going to want to proof it right. So create a new artboard, Shift O, And you can make this a little bit larger than all of your artboards combined. And if you have a good photo of the building, you can go ahead and drop that into the background and get it into scale. That all depends on if you get the good photo or not. And so this new artboard, you can call this proof or overall or whatever you want to call it. So at this point, you're good to export a proof using screens once you've got everything set up. And you can send it over to your customer. Once they approve it, what you're going to do is come back in. You can turn off your mullions layer and then export for screens the actual windows. But you did bring up bleed, so as far as adding the bleed, we're going to do that before we export the print panels. So you could go to document setup here, and if, let's say, you wanted to do the bleed on the right and the bottom, you would just go ahead and put one on bottom, one on right, hit OK, and you're going to see that all your artboards now have that bleed. So yeah, at that point you'd be good to export for artboards. And to do that, we've got ours hot mapped, but you could go to export for screens. When this pops up, you could click, all of your artboards except for the proof, because you don't necessarily need that one on this, and set it as a PDF. Choose where you want it to save to and hit export. So that's how you would do the bleed bottom and right. I'll just turn this off. If you were doing the method where you were just printing your panels based on the exact measurements of the windows, you'd be good to just export like this. And if you did want to do the negative or inset bleed, what you're going to do is you're going to do Shift-O for the artboard tool, click on each panel. You could start on, whoops, I'm sorry, don't do Shift-O. Go to document setup and edit your artboards here. And then in the width, you're going to make sure that your reference point is going to be center. So you would do -5, that's going to take a 1/4 inch off of both sides, and then over here on the height you're also going to do -0.5, and that will remove from that side as well. Once you've done that to each of your panels, then you could go ahead and export them, and that's how you get the negative bleed. So -0.5. So it looks like I probably did -5 on that one. But essentially that's how we would go ahead and set up our windows. But it's nice having the mullions on a non-print layer, because you don't actually have to turn it off to export. You can leave it on and it won't show up in your print file. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching.